What's up, everyone? And today I'm bringing a deck profile on my Exosisters now. Exosisters is a really powerful deck, and I wouldn't say it's the best deck of the four, because that obviously goes to Sprite and Tier Elements, but it's definitely a deck that you're definitely going to want to consider. More so because Exosisters is a deck that's going to be very format dependent. Considering the main gimmick of this deck is to whenever your opponent moves a card from their graveyard to somewhere else, you can essentially XYZ summon an Exosister monster on top of the one monster, which Tier Elements does that. Sprite does that. Graveyard Alliance is kind of definitely back in the format, so that makes the deck a lot more powerful. Not to mention the new support is just that good. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. First off, I run 3 Exosister Martha. Unfortunately, I do not have copies of Martha. I tried to get him, but I haven't been able to. And I didn't really want to wait another 2 weeks for the cards to arrive to do this deck profile. So Martha is just an insane card. Not only if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand, or if you only control XYZ monsters. But if you do, you can special summon one Exosister Ellis from your deck. Although it does lock you into only special summoning Exosister monsters for the rest of the turn, which that's really all you run, so that's not really a downside at all. And all the Exosisters have an additional effect to where if a card moves out of either graveyard, you can special summon from your extra deck one Exosister monster, using this face-up card you control as material. I also run 3 Exosister Ellis. Ellis, if you control an Exosister monster, you can special summon it from the hand. And same effect, secondary effect as Martha too. Unlike Martha, the other Exosisters require your opponent to move a card out of the graveyard. But for Martha, let's say you banish a card from your graveyard, then Martha works. However, the other Exosisters require your opponent to move a card out of either graveyard. I also run 3 Exosister Stella. Stella, during your main phase, you can special summon one Exosister monster from your hand. 3 Sophia. If you control another Exosister monster, you can draw 1 card. Now, I actually noticed that a lot of builds for running 2, which I don't really understand. It's a free draw 1. I don't see why you wouldn't run it. Well, in some builds, they also play Pot of Prosperity, which I don't in this build, so maybe that's why. But then again, definitely a card you want to max out on. Also run the 1 Irene. Out of all the Exosisters, Irene is definitely easily the weakest of them. Essentially, you just place 1 Exosister card from your hand on the bottom of the deck, and then draw 1 card. Most oftentimes, you're not going to want to do that because you're going to want your Exosister cards in hand to be able to use them. Now, if it was just place 1 card from your hand onto the bottom of the deck to draw 1, then that'd actually be pretty good. But unfortunately, you can only use that for Exosister monsters. Now for hand traps, I run 3 D-Shifter. You don't really care about what gets into the graveyard because you don't have any grave recurrence or do anything really with your grave. Of course, you could do something with Martha, but that's very hard to do. And D-Shifter in this meta is going to be insanely good because that shuts Tier Elements down, it shuts Sprite down. With D-Shifter, those decks just aren't even playable. So definitely want to run this card. Another hand trap, I also run 3 Draw and Lockbird. Out of all the hand traps, I feel like ones that just negate 1 effect or something like that don't really do much, but Droll is a lingering effect, so definitely really good. Same with D-Shifter, both of them are lingering effects, so they will hurt your opponent for the entirety of their turn. Moving on to the spells, I run 3 Exosister packs. Packs during the main phase, you can pay 100 life points to add 1 Exosister card from your deck to your hand. Then if you added a monster by its effect, you can special summon it if the other Exosister monster mentioned on that card is on your field or in your graveyard. So for example, let's say you have Ellis on the field and you add Stella. You can essentially summon Stella from your hand. So not only it's a search, but it can also be a summon depending on what you add off of it. Also run the 1 Exosister Arment. This is more for if your opponent doesn't really use their grave, because this allows you to XYZ summon an Exosister monster without having to use their effect to summon by when your opponent moves a card out of the graveyard. Also run 1 Carpe Diem. It's a little bit of protection. Now player can target Exosister monster control with card with the effects of monsters that were special summoned from the graveyard. And if you XYZ summon an Exosister monster, you declare 1 card game. You get the activated effects and effects on that field with that card's name. So say you're going against Tier Elements, for example. And let's say they special summon something from the graveyard or remove something from the graveyard to go into their fusion monster. You can use the effect of Carpe Diem to negate the Call system. Next, do you want to do something during your turn? you're prepared with some triple tactics talents. Draw 2, steal a monster, or discard 1 card from their hand. You know, all are definitely really good options. Also run 3 Dark Ruler no more. Hand traps, they're just not really doing much right now. But at least with the card like Dark Ruler no more, if you happen to go second, you can just shut off everything they're doing, and it's going to be pretty hard for them to kind of play, although they are still going to have some plays, mainly if you're talking about Sprite or Tier Elements, considering those can, well, not really Sprites, but Tier Elements definitely has some sort of counter with the trap, but it will definitely shut off Sprites. Next, another good going second card, Super Poly. Really good in this format. Good against Tier Elements, good against Sprites, good against Branded, good against really most decks. And thankfully they got that new Garuda, which I don't have in the extra deck, more so just because I haven't been able to get that card yet. But that's definitely a card I would run. And also run 1 Call to the Grave, you know, to mess around during with your opponent's plays or protect yourself from hand traps, either or. Moving on to traps, I run 2 Returnia. Exosister Returnia, if all the monsters you control are Exosister monsters, pay 800 life points. The target card your opponent controls or in their graveyard, banish it. Then you can apply one of the following effects. Either XYZ summon 1 Exosister monster using a monster you control, or if you XYZ summon this turn, banish 1 card your opponent controls. So either you can banish, or go into one of your Exosister XYZs for negations or more banishing. Yeah, this deck can definitely banish a lot of your opponent's cards. Next, I run 2 Exosister Vadis. Vadis is a free Exosister rank monster. Essentially, you can choose 1 Exosister monster from your deck, then take 1 other monster from your graveyard that is mentioned on that monster. Special summon both, but shuffle them into the deck during the end phase. So you can use this on your opponent's turn to, whenever they activate an effect in the graveyard, to essentially go into one of your Exosister monsters, or on your turn to go into a rank 4. And I also run 2 Infinite Impermanence. Moving on to the extra deck. I run 3 Exosister Michaelis. Michaelis cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster special summon from the graveyard, and has a cool effect to where once per turn, if you control this card that was XYZ summoned this turn by using an Exosister monster as material. Quick effect, you target 1 card on your opponent controls or in the graveyard, banish it. And as an additional effect, to detach material from this card to add 1 Exosister spell and trap from deck to hand. You got spell and trap removal, and you also got, not spell and trap removal, you got a spell and trap searching, but you also got monster searching with Exosister Caspitel. Now, Caspitel doesn't really do much during your opponent's turn. It just prevents your opponent from moving cards out of the graveyard, which I guess against something like Tier Elements or Sprite could be really good, but it's definitely not the one you're most likely to go for. You're more likely to go for the Michaelis or the Exosister Gabrina. Now, Gabrina is, instead of a banish like Michaelis, it's a negation. Also run 3 Exosister Magnifica. Magnifica is really good. The one thing is that it does not have a hard once per turn on its effect. The effect to banish is only a soft once per turn, so if you have 3 Magnifica, which isn't too hard to do, then you can banish 3. And it has an additional effect to where you can detach a Exosister XYZ monster from Magnifica, send it back to the extra deck, then special summon it back out using Magnifica as material. So let's say you summon Magnifica using Gabrine and Michaelis. You can return the Michaelis to special summon Michaelis out, then use Michaelis' effect, because it was summoned that turn by Magnifica. Also run 1 Abyss Dweller. Really good this format. Definitely a card you're going to want to have. Next are a couple cards that are kind of arguable. I got the 1 Utopic Future and the 1 Utopic Draco Future. Now, you could take this out for like maybe an access code or an IP if you want. That's really depending on what you want to do. That's kind of on the fence about this. I thought about also maybe running like Appaloosa IP access code, which could be an option. The main reason I run these 2 is for Zeus. Getting multiple XYZ monsters onto the field is fairly easy. And essentially what I'm using Utopic Draco Futures for is to kind of condense that for Zeus. So you can get a pretty big Zeus with that, making me like 8 materials or something like that. And lastly, I run the 1 Dragos Tapelia and the 1 Mud Dragon of the Swamp for super poly targets. I'd also run the Garua probably over the Dragos Tapelia or maybe the Mud Dragon, but I don't quite have that quite yet. But that's also another option. That's it for my Exosister deck profile. And what do you think? Think Exosister is pretty cool? Let me know in the comments and I'll see you in the next video I make.